This is Newsfeed PM. Let's give you your business news now. South Africa's largest commercial business chamber, Sacci, says it will remember Tito Mboweni as a frank and sharp intellect who made great effort to connect big business, government, labor and the community at large. We're now joined by Advocate Mtho Xulu, the president of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. This was a man who was able to garner the respect of his colleagues in the public sector, but also in the private sector, and garners those relationship between the two, something that wasn't easy to do back in the 90s.
Good afternoon. Certainly, good afternoon to the viewers. And starting off by expressing our condolences to the family and to all South Africans on the loss of such a great South African that we've all experienced and witnessed and saw his work and sometimes actually benefiting from the legacy that he has left behind. Certainly, you'd imagine a 30-year-old coming into the scene in one of the most polarized societies and trying to build together an economy, and actually not just build it together, but also institutionalize its relationships, where you have big business that was very stubborn, labor that was very militant, and communities and government that were trying to find shape of their realities. And he was able to put it together both in institutions and also in legislation. So his legacy started off from there, and he's a personification of actually a social compact in this country, because he was the man that was able to pull together different people at a very young age.
These days, Mtho, we see government and business working together to try and either bolster the economy or create jobs in the country. Wasn't something that was very easy to do. So what was Tito Mboweni's role in making sure he could thread the two fabrics together?
Look, I think it talks of a man who was clear-minded about what South Africa should look like. He didn't resign to the fact that it was such a difficult society. He was very clear-minded. Even before he joined government, you would hear the comments that he had made and the work that he had prepared for the African National Congress at the time was that we were going to build an inclusive country that will be able to take advantage of big business and protect labor, and make sure that we carve together a society that we can all be proud of. So I think he was clear-minded. He understood the goal to say, let's make sure that we build institutions that are objective, that everybody can subscribe to, because we are all going to be driven by a similar goal. So ultimately, the peace was found in the fact that he did not take party leanings. He did not favor one constituency over the other. He built an organization that can be based on human rights, that can be based on international trends, and making sure that it's an objective organization that can be fair to all. And eventually, everybody had to subscribe to that, because it was not based on favoritism. It was based on the objective of building a globally competitive economy.
How important then was his role in pioneering the establishment of NEDLAC, especially for South Africa that needed all parts of society to come together to make sure we have this great nation we enjoy today?
Look, he played a significant role. You know that as Minister of Labour, he's the one actually that led the formation of NEDLAC under an act of parliament that fell under his ministry. But I think what he also actually did, he built on the negotiated settlement of the country. And actually what happened in the first few years of NEDLAC, it was actually the continuation of the culture of saying, how do you bring different stakeholders in the same way you negotiated for a democratic South Africa? How do you continue that and take it to the business community, where you can negotiate the conditions of the shop floor, you can negotiate the markets of the capital space, but also making sure that government is continuously held accountable by labor and business about how they are managing public policy. So it was, probably, I guess, he got a lot of courage from the success of the negotiations, and he simply just institutionalized them to make sure that they find relevance in the economy.
Now, you represent Sacci, that has around 20,000 businesses that it represents. Was he a tough man to negotiate with when it came to matching government policy and what business wanted for the economy?
Look, he was very stern. Our experience with him, I personally, for instance, joined the board and became president of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry around the time when he came back to government as Minister of Finance. So I was able to experience him as a man who was very stern, looking back from his own experiences and saying, how do we build a new chapter of honest relationships between government and business. So he didn't cave in easily to our demands, but he was also not unreasonable in terms of our negotiations, where we tried to push for greater respect and greater participation of the private sector in the national discourse. So he was a man who was very stern, very loyal to his ideas, but also very open-minded to working with stakeholders and ultimately crafting a relationship that can be objectively judged and objectively measured.
How then will business remember him as a role player in the country's economy? Because as I said before, the big question was around the lack of investment from business, and I'm sure he's been in more of those fights in the boardrooms to say, look, we have the economic policy in place, just back us in terms of the capital. So how will business remember his legacy now?
Yeah, well, look, I would like to encourage business to remember him, at least for the 30 years odd that he was very active in the discourse of society. He was somebody who came in very young, so that also talks to the ability of South Africans that from him we must learn the ability to harness young leaders. And also he went on to build institutions that have outlived him. So it goes back for us to remember that institutions are actually that's what's going to keep us going. And ultimately, to be fair and make sure that you keep an open mind in managing stakeholders. Those are the three things that kept him very close to the business community, because he came in at a young age, very confident, built him up very quickly to run institutions, and also made sure that he managed stakeholders in a fair and balanced manner. Even when he came back as Minister of Finance, he was one of the first persons to talk about the need for us to be fiscally disciplined and making sure that we harness and make sure that all resources that we have in society come up for the national good. So those are some of the traits that he lived by, and I hope that we can carry forward as a current generation of business leaders.
Mtho, thank you very much for your time. Mtho Xulu, the advocate, of course, the president of Sacci, talking to us about the late Tito Mboweni.